How can they be the happiest country on the planet when we spend so much time trying to make them unhappy? Welcome to the most censored news. I'm Lee Camp. Let me ask you, are you happy? Do you feel happy? Do you spend a lot of time laughing at the sun like that? Do you feel at peace in your life? If you're an American like me, then I'll bet you a KFC family bucket meant for one person that the answer is no. What? What, are you crazy? Have you looked around? We've got a climate crisis, a wage slave society, tainted water, smoggy air. Most of our meals have more pesticide in them than food particles. The only human interaction we get is when someone clicks thumbs down on the Instagram photo of our pesticide-filled dinner, and we have an addled brain octogenarian leading the way the whole time. How could anyone feel at peace? Well, what if I told you there are countries where people do feel at peace? For example, Nicaragua. The other day, Gallup found that Nicaragua is the world's #1 country where citizens feel at peace. Worldwide, the percentage of people who say they always feel at peace with their thoughts and feelings ranges from a low of 11% in Zimbabwe to a high of 73% in Nicaragua. The list of countries worldwide where the majority of people say they always feel at peace is dominated by countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. Latin America? Nicaragua? That can't be right. If you read the U.S. media, then you know Nicaragua is a repressive, disgusting hellhole where people have to use rotten banana peels as pants and used condoms as banana peels. As Ben Norton writes, the United States and Western media outlets have long demonized Nicaragua's Sandinista government and its president, Daniel Ortega, sponsoring violent coup attempts against him and imposing illegal unilateral sanctions aimed at hurting the Central American nation's economy. Who are Nicaraguans to feel at peace? Fuck them! We should create a coup against them. Don't we have CIA assholes with like poison darts shooting out of their wristwatches and shit?
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you.
So why haven't we couped Nicaragua recently? Oh, we tried. In 2018, the U.S. government funded media designed to fuel a violent coup in Nicaragua, aimed at bringing down President Ortega. Didn't work, though. Apparently, too much of the country feels at peace, and too many of the people actually do like Ortega. According to M&R Consultores, one of the top polling companies in Latin America, over 77% of Nicaraguans support Ortega. 77%. That's double the amount of Americans who approve of Joe Biden's job performance. Not sure why people disapprove of him. Maybe they were turned off by that cabinet meeting he had where he was wearing a lampshade on his head and he told everyone he's actually a desk chair. Apparently the lampshade was unrelated. But the U.S. attacks on the happy, at peace people of Nicaragua haven't stopped. A year ago, Ortega was sworn in for a 4th term as the U.S. and EU imposed economic war. In fact, NBC News was so eager to push propaganda against President Ortega that they accidentally called him President Noriega in their article multiple times. Manuel Noriega was, of course, the corrupt dictator of Panama, who we actually installed as dictator because, much like Saddam Hussein, he was a close friend to the U.S., until he wasn't anymore. Then the U.S. invaded and couped him.
Fellow citizens, last night I ordered U.S. military forces to Panama. No president takes such action lightly.
Man, isn't that awkward? Especially since Noriega was on the CIA payroll for decades. Ugh, former employees are the worst. Yeah, sometimes they just steal a box of staples on the way out, but other times they steal the country of Panama from you, and HR doesn't do shit. Anyway, NBC News figured, why not make people think Ortega is a U.S.-backed dictator from the 1980s? What's the difference? Both their names end in "guh." And that article came out in June of last year, and they haven't corrected it. It's still up. What What happened to shame? Was it shame? Like if you shit down your pants, do you not have shame? Why are they not ashamed of sucking so bad? They have done the journalistic equivalent of shitting down their pants and then just left it up there for everyone to see. Ha ha! The US has Julian Assange locked away for getting everything right. Meanwhile, NBC News can't get the name of the president they're talking about correct. And whoever wrote that is still just roaming the streets, a danger to us all. But more recently, the US media and our government have been breathlessly yelling about the record numbers of Nicaraguans fleeing to the US. Hundreds of thousands of Nicaraguans have fled their country in recent years, escaping poverty and repression under an increasingly authoritarian government. My God, so many people leaving Nicaragua. Good thing that never happens here. No one ever leaves the United States, right? Actually, 8.7 million Americans live in 160 plus countries. Yes, nearly 9 million American citizens have fled the United States, which is much higher than the 6.8 million people who amount to the entire population of Nicaragua. More people have fled the U.S. than Nicaragua has humans. But when Americans leave the U.S., they aren't said to have fled. They just relocated. Sounds so much nicer, doesn't it? They aren't called migrants or refugees. They're just called expats. Those 9 million Americans living in other countries are all just on vacation, right? Even the ones who left because they decided they wanted their family to have health care as a human right, or a roof over their head as a human right, or maybe they were tired of fighting endless systemic racism. They're just on a temporary vacation. A vacation from racism. We have no repression here in the U.S. We only have one of the largest, most heavily funded, and most deadly police forces in the world. We are the largest prison state, locking up millions of our own citizens. Our country is literally always at war. And although pretty much everyone knows you can be arrested in the U.S. for things like insulting a police officer or being black, a lot of people don't know you can now be arrested for jokes. Anthony Novak of Parma, Ohio, was arrested and spent 4 days in jail for creating and maintaining a Facebook account parodying his local police department. Waylon Bailey of Rapides Parish, Louisiana, was arrested after posting a faux warning to his Facebook friends during the early days of the pandemic. But no, we don't have any repression here. That type of thing only happens in places like Nicaragua. Damn you, Nicaragua! And your 73% of people who always feel at peace. Here in the US, we'd be lucky to find 10% of people feeling at peace. And even that 10% is only because they're a server at Waffle House and the lunch shift just ended and they have 20 minutes when they can smoke a goddamn cigarette before getting called toots by another gaggle of mouth breathers. But man, oh man, that 20 minutes standing out back between the corned beef hash disposal bucket and the dead raccoon is sweet. Pretty sweet. Well, hold on. Even though so many Nicaraguans feel at peace, they must manage to do that while hating their awful government, right? Because I read the Washington Post every time a piece of it blows up against my foot after unsticking itself from a pile of dog links. And the Washington Post says everyone in Nicaragua hates the government. Actually, studies show that the Sandinista front is very popular among the Nicaraguan people who enjoy a high quality of life compared to their neighbors. Very popular? High quality of life? Despite the U.S. economic war on them? Interesting. Well, is the U.S. government very popular with us American peoples? Back in 2018, Gallup found 60% of Americans overall said in 2017 and again in 2018 that they would like to permanently move to another country if only they could. 16% of America is over 50 million people who would like to leave America if they had the ability. That's over 7 times the entire population of Nicaragua. Point being, most of what we know about Nicaragua is propaganda. There's very little truth about that country in our mainstream media, which is just parroting U.S. government lies. Take this article. U.S. unleashes new sanctions targeting Nicaragua's Ortega regime. Let's look at all the propaganda in just those few words. Well, for one, sanctions is a polite word for economic war, so it should say U.S. unleashes economic war. Then they claim it's targeting Ortega, the president. But if you know anything about economic war, it actually targets the poor, the ill, the elderly, the infants. So really, most economic war does far more damage to the poorest and weakest than it does to the rich and the powerful. They don't care. They don't feel it. Then in the headline, they throw in the word regime so that you picture this guy. Any country the U.S. empire hates, you'll notice, is a regime. Any country the U.S. loves has an elected government. Israel doesn't have an apartheid regime. It has a people-powered democracy. Saudi Arabia doesn't have a brutal monarchy. It has a non-brutal rainbow monarchy. So what are these sanctions for? Maybe it's because that authoritarian regime makes every Nicaraguan feel miserable. Never mind. They all feel at peace. Shit. Okay, I know. Maybe it's because women are treated so horribly in Nicaragua. What? Oh, Nicaragua is also the 7th in the world in terms of gender equality. It is the highest level of women's representation in all of the Americas. Damn it! I thought we had them on that. Well, you know what? I bet that poll was written by a woman. They're the worst. Well, then what in God's name is our economic war against Nicaragua about? Well, the U.S. government says it's to hold the Nicaraguan regime, there's that word again, to account for its escalating human rights violations, continued dismantling of democratic institutions, attacks on civil society, and increasing security cooperation with Russia. Dismantling democratic institutions? We vote on black box voting machines that you can never see the code. You have no idea whether anything we vote for is ever actually counted. No one can ever show you any proof that you fucking get the point. You get the point. And then they add in their escalating human rights violations. Oh, so the sinister Ortega regime is forcing Nicaraguans to feel more at peace than any other country. Blah, ha, 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 ha. Boy, that sounds awful. Here in the U.S., though, we're not like that. We have freedom. We have the freedom to feel really not at peace. In fact, Gallup found 60% of people reported being emotionally detached at work and 19% as being miserable. In the U.S., 50% of workers reported feeling stressed at their jobs on a daily basis, 41% as being worried, 22% as sad, and 18% as angry. You know the classic song, "Proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm angry, sad, worried, and stressed." I sang that at my bar mitzvah. And on top of that, more than 37 million Americans take antidepressants, and very few of those know that they don't actually work. Go back and watch my episode on that if you haven't seen it. I mean, actually, you're not allowed to be here unless you've seen every previous episode of Most Censored News. So just go. Just go. Well, man, considering over half of all Americans are either stressed, depressed, sad, angry, pissed, stymied, furious, annoyed, crossed, vexed, or sexually frustrated, while over half of all Nicaraguans always feel at peace, I want that goddamn repressive regime. That sounds amazing. Where do I sign up? Or maybe, just maybe, the country with the world's largest prison population, imprisoning people for telling jokes or stealing a candy bar or selling dildos or being homeless or for giving food to the homeless. Maybe that country is the repressive regime that is causing misery. Maybe we need to sanction ourselves rather than trying to destroy other countries. Just spitballing. That's it for the most censored news for this week. However, please click subscribe. You can also now click join and you can become a member of our YouTube page. Also, when you click subscribe, click the bell icon so you can find out about all our videos. I do 2 interviews a week with amazing people like Richard Wolff, Chris Hedges, Scott Ritter, Stella Assange. I've talked to all those people right here at youtube.com/behindtheheadlines. You can also join us on Patreon and keep fighting.